All right, y'all. Let me get my poll put together. You two gotta have a better way to do this. I think I could set it up beforehand. But in any event, are you subscribed? Y'all know how it goes. If you are subscribed to the channel, thank you and welcome. If you're not subscribed, go get subscribed. Come back and answer the poll. Yes or no, but yes, mostly yes, because we're all going to be doing yes. Anyway, this is the first podcast run out of the year. We made it to 2025, y'all. Despite many times, many times where it didn't seem like we was gonna make it, we actually made it to 2025. So as you all know, I'm the icn.dj, Wise Grisette, and this is the podcast rundown. And on the podcast rundown, what I do is talk about podcasts that caught my eye this week. And I'm only going to be focusing on shows that dropped episodes from January 1st. So we really don't even have a full week, but I have quite a few shows to let y'all know about. In any event, here's some things you need to know first and foremost. I am the ICN DJ, Wise Rosette. I run this channel. First things first. Second thing, this is called the podcast rundown. I go live 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And on Fridays, I talk about podcasts that caught my ear or my eye. So we're gonna talk about that this week. So if you all want to get tapped into any of the podcasts that we have, or you want to get tapped into any of the podcasts that are available on any platform that I'm going to talk about today, make sure that you all go to 2 platforms. I'm going to highlight both of them right now. icn.dj, that's one. That's our channel, of course. Our channel, and that's our website. And listen.revolt.tv. Those are the 2 places I'm going to be talking about podcasts from today, from ICN DJ and from Revolt Podcast Network. So if you all are not tapped in, again, make sure that you all are following us on Instagram at ICNDJ. Follow us on Twitter, formerly known as X. See what I did there? Anyway, follow us there. It's ICN_DJ because someone stole our name. Anyway, with that being said, so here are some podcasts that we are going to be discussing today. I have all my tools here today, so I can like prop my other phone up here. Let's get you set here. And let's talk about the things today. Actually, let me talk about this first. So I ended up going back to a podcast that um actually is completed. And I'm not sure if you all ever listen to completed podcasts, but I do like listening to completed podcasts because if you think about it, those completed podcasts are ones that, you can literally binge, you can kind of get the time stamp on what happened during that year. And for me, I went back and listened to an episode of this podcast called And Friends with Gina Jefferson. She is a journalist in New York City. And during that time period, she had a podcast at my podcast studio where she just would talk to people in the entertainment industry. And I just said, why not listen to my episode? And it was amazing. From listening to that episode, actually, she used to have this thing called the Beyonce Mood of the Day. It was a playlist that she had on Spotify. It probably is still up right now, but um she had this thing called Beyonce Move Today. And with the Beyonce Move Today, it was a Spotify playlist. I thought that was really cool. So I incorporated that into my podcast behind the mic. I feel like every time I go live in the people in this category, people just be coming in to troll. Anyway, hey Namal, nice to meet you. Cool. So in any event, um, here are some podcasts that we are going to talk about today. So, as you all know, Paging Dr. Shonda is a podcast on that is on the Revolt page. So, listen.revolt.tv, or if you just go to the podcast space, you can just type in Paging Dr. Shonda. She did a podcast episode featuring Omarion from B2K. um, if y'all not familiar with them, get off the live. I'm joking. Anyway, so yeah, she did a podcast episode with Omarion, speaking about emotional intelligence. So make sure that you all check that one out. That actually was a really cool conversation. And again, it's Omarion from B2K, one of the historically great uh music boy bands of all time. Anyway, another episode I want to highlight today is from Holden Court. This is another podcast on the Revolt Podcast Network. Holden Court, they had a conversation. The actual title of the podcast episode is called "Discuss Nepotism and Building Generational Wealth," and influencers being the new celebrity. So y'all know we live in this world where an influencer like Kai Cenat, who is the biggest streamer on Twitch, can be just as popular and as like a famous rap artist, as a famous pop artist, as a famous whatever. And that is because the influencer has now like found its way in celebrity speardom. Let's go with that. So I found that to be pretty interesting. He also discussed nepotism, which I'm like, kinda not. I have a controversial opinion on that. So, yes, check that one out. It's big. It's the title of the episode is "Big Core and Rachel Renee discuss nepotism, building generational wealth, and influencers being the new celebrity." Holden Court podcast. Cool. Next up, Uncle Murda actually joined the Danza Project for an interview with Danza. So for one, check that one out again. That's again also on Revolt Podcast Network. But on this podcast itself, they sat down in Las Vegas to kind of do a whole, 2024 wrap up. He, has his own record company and all the things. So they went down the whole line, as you can imagine, of like Uncle Murda's incredible career in hip hop. So definitely check that episode out as well too. It's Uncle Murda, Murda, on the Danza Project. Danza spelled Danza. That again can also be found on Revolt Podcast Network. Listen.revolt.tv, on Instagram at Revolt Podcast Network, on Twitter, formerly known as X. So what I did there. It is Revolt Podcast. Now I see some people have joined the room and have started to vote. Again, if you are subscribed, click yes. If you are not subscribed, go and get subscribed, then come back and click yes again. Oh, now, the last podcast I'm going to highlight today is a podcast called Double Dose. So on Remote Podcast Network, we have twins that are part of our podcast network. They each individually have their own show. One is called Paging Dr. Shonda, which I mentioned already. The other one is called The Success Playbook, and that one is with Chanel Reynolds. But together, they are the Double Dose podcast, which comes out weekly. And on that episode, on this episode, they brought back a clip from their interview with Candace Diller Bassett. So they had a live show with Candace Diller Bassett, who, if you all are not familiar with, was on Real Housewives of Potomac up until last season, because it's a new season of Real Housewives now. So definitely listen to the clip. The clip is about representing natural black hair on TV. There are things like the Crown Act and other things that help people get represented properly in the space of hair care on television or in entertainment. I myself, am a natural hair guy. So definitely check that one out. That is pretty cool. Now, finally, to wrap up this live today, so as you all know, maybe you don't know, but you're gonna find out now. I am the host of Behind the Mic podcast, powered by Revolt Podcast Network, and on that podcast, I interview people who are in podcasting, like hosts primarily, but I interview those people to talk specifically about who they are behind the mic, giving people that information as to say, like, yeah, like I have this podcast, but here's who I am outside of that podcast. Soy Santino Gamer, welcome. Hello, 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 hello to you too. Answer the poll. Are you subscribed? Yes or no? If you are subscribed, click yes. If you're not subscribed, click yes anyway and go get subscribed. So on Behind the Mic, I actually just did an interview with the podcast coordinator over at Revolt Podcast Network, Devin Wingfield. If you all have listened to any of my lives at any point in time in 2024, you have heard me shout out Devin quite a few times. So I was very, 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 very excited to do that interview with him. And it was amazing. I actually did that, I want to say about 2 hours and 20 minutes ago. 3 hours and 20 minutes ago. So I'm actually going to go edit that episode right after this live. But we talked about Devin's interest in entertainment and how he got to where he was. I didn't know that Devin went to school for media entertainment. I didn't know that Devin, I know he ran track, but I didn't know that Devin was a state champion in Ohio. That is actually incredible. I didn't even know that his best friend is his coach. Well, his best friend's dad was his track coach, who then also is now on Revolt Podcast Network too. So hella full circle. Definitely a cool interview. That episode will be going live on Monday morning at 9 a.m. And if you actually are subscribed to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you can listen to audio podcasts, that episode actually will be live on the same Monday, but at 12 o'clock midnight Eastern Standard Time. So definitely, y'all make sure that you are checking that out. Subscribe to Behind the Mic, powered by Revolt Podcast Network, again on all of your favorite podcast platforms and available on YouTube. We have our own YouTube page and own YouTube channel, so definitely check that one out. Anyway, with that being said, that is the end of the podcast rundown. This is the first, again, the first podcast rundown of the year. So thank you all very much for tapping in. And I'm going to see you all next time. This is Wise Rosette, also known, internationally known, really. I don't know why I said that. I'm crying. Anyway, y'all, deuces.